joining us right now on the BetQL Guest Hotline. He is the new general manager of your Washington Capitals.
Very good.
Chris Patrick. What's up, Chris?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
So,
Doing
Chris,
well.
this has
Thanks for
kind of been
joining
a
us.
long climb for you. Looking back on it, you went to college, pretty good college, Princeton. Got his MBA from,
Not bad.
from UVA. And then you worked in the business world, but then you decided, I want to get into the hockey world
Yeah, the
in
family
2008.
business.
Yeah.
Can you tell us like your first job and how you kind of rose through the ranks all the way up to GM now?
Yeah, well, first in the business world, when I was driving to work every day, Junks were appointment radio for me.
Oh, sweet.
Wow.
Back when you guys were on HFS.
Awesome. Thank you.
Wow.
Then one day I turned it on, and everybody was speaking Spanish. I didn't know what happened. But,
Yeah, we didn't either.
That was a curveball for us too, Chris.
Dude, you listened to us during the wilder days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was wild. You guys have tamed it down a little bit since then.
Yeah. So what happens when you get to 54 years old? You kind of lose your energy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you were driving
Yeah,
to work and you decided, hey, I got to get in the family business.
Yeah. Well, and that was always a thing for me. Like in college, I mean, once it was very clear that I wasn't going to make it as a player, my next move for me, I would have loved to gotten into the game, in scouting or management or something. But I was like, coming right out of college as a 22-year-old kid, how's that going to look? So I kind of said, well, it's good opportunities right now to get a job in finance. So I went and did it, and kind of said maybe the hockey dream's over. But I guess I couldn't quite get over it. I'd go to games and watch as a fan. Just felt like I was missing out a little bit. So finally, I thought that the timing was right and the opportunity was right to maybe make the jump. And yeah, I kind of started in. George McPhee gave me a opportunity to come in and get my feet wet and do some different things. And I kind of started out just doing some scouting at the amateur level and going to a lot of college games and junior games and kind of tracking some of our own prospects in Hershey and it kind of built from there.
How tough is the scouting life?
It's tough. It was definitely tougher for me when I was doing the amateur and college stuff, just because, I live kind of near Annapolis. So there's not teams that are really close for me to get to, there and back in one day kind of thing. Once I transitioned to pro, it was a little bit easier. You can manage it better. Hershey, Philly, only a couple hours drive from where I am. And then the whole New York metro area is very accessible either by train or car. So then you could kind of make a schedule that works for your work-life balance a little bit better. As far as like the actual job itself, I mean, it's about as good as you can get if you're a hockey nerd. I mean, you're going into games and you're dissecting everything that happens and you're trying to figure out, which way some guys are going and how they may fit on your team. And you never know, you might do a report on a guy that, you just said, well, he kind of jumped out at me tonight, I'll do a report. And then 2 years later, you're looking it up because you're getting ready to make a trade for him. So it's kind of one of those things where you never know what game you watch might end up being something that you draw upon in the future.
So, Chris, you're stepping into a role vacated most recently by Brian McClellan, who won a Stanley Cup here. And before that, you touched on George McPhee. He held that seat for 17 seasons. He helped assemble a lot of that Stanley Cup winning team. How much influence have they had on your career, and how much pressure do you feel to continue with their vision and what they've established here in Washington over the last 25 years?
Yeah, well, a ton of influence both on my career. I mean, obviously George was the one that first gave me my opportunity and was really great about welcoming me in and making me feel like a part of it. And then Mac all along, even before he was GM, I mean, he was running the pro scouting staff when he approached me when there was an opening to come over and start doing that. And then as GM, I mean, him and I have worked very closely together on everything, team related. And I really feel like as a person and as a manager, he's a guy that I've learned a lot from about how to run a successful organization and how to treat people. And so a huge influence on me, which is why I'm really excited that, we've kind of set up this tandem here going forward, which I think a lot of teams around the league are starting to do. And you're going to see more of it where you have kind of a president of hockey ops that usually is a guy that's been the GM in the past, and then another guy that's the GM that's kind of doing the day-to-day legwork, and those two working together kind of set the tone and the direction and the strategy for the team.
All right, we're talking to Chris Patrick, new GM of the Washington Capitals. He's been with the Capitals for a long time, starting in the scouting department, 16, 17 years ago. And now he's the guy. And just, the other three teams in town, Chris, as you know, are kind of in a rebuild because you're seeing it with the Nats, right? They're very young. You should have seen the lineup last night, man. They were all like 25 years old, 24, 25 years old. You're seeing it with the Wizards, obviously, all right? With the Skins / Commanders, you're kind of seeing it. I mean, new coaching staff, and man, they completely rebuilt their rosters, like 30 new guys. But I don't get the feeling that you guys would be in that rebuild. I mean, you've made some moves. You traded Darcy for Pierre-Luc Dubois to get some offense. I can't pronounce the other guy's name who came in from Calgary. You traded a draft pick.
Mangiapane. Is that pretty close?
Yeah.
That's not bad, right?
That's not.
He's the original bread man. Everybody thinks Panarin's the bread man, but Mangiapane's the original bread man. Yeah.
You got another goalie from Vegas,
Logan Thompson.
Thompson. So kind of talk about the moves you guys have made, because you clearly aren't in a rebuild. You're trying to acquire some offense and some better players through these trades. So. Just kind of talk about where you see the roster right now, including the guys you added.
Yeah, so I think it starts with some of the younger players that were already in our system kind of heading into this offseason. I mean, I think this past season you saw Connor McMichael and Alexei Protas take steps, right? They played a full season in the NHL. They played big roles and got to play some playoff games in a really tough environment against a really good team. Marty Feravari seems like he's been around forever, still a young guy that plays heavy minutes for us. And then you kind of have the next wave, both age-wise and kind of where they are on their path coming. 3 or 4 guys that just won a Calder Cup in Hershey. For some of them, their second one in a row, which we think it gives them huge experience as far as being good NHLers. And then the last 2 drafts we've had, I think, have been very good. We got Ryan Leonard, 8th overall 2 years ago. Went and won a gold medal for the World Juniors last year. Played in the World Championships against the men. Was 1 game away from winning it all at BC. It looks like he's going to be a very good Washington Capital for a long time. Really like where we ended up at the draft this year. So we have kind of 4 or 5 layers of prospects coming, where we feel like if these guys develop the way we think they can, they're going to be good NHLers. So when a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois becomes available, for us, it was, there was obviously risk involved with the contract and how his game was in LA this year. But I know there was, including us, at least 15 teams last year that would have signed up for that contract with him, and we're trying to get in on him. For whatever reason, we think we did our research and understand why it wasn't a fit in LA, and we think he'll come here and do a really good job for us. And then you got a 26-year-old player that's got size, got some skill, got a little snarl, and can maybe be a top 6 center for us for the next 7 years. So I think there's a lot of pieces in place that if we're smart about the players we add, and if we get guys that play within our system and play the way Carbs wants to play, we can have a competitive team. And I think there's examples around the league of teams that have been able to make this kind of transition. I think if you look in the conference finals this year, both Florida and Dallas are teams that, they made a lot of changes and built around a core that was either aging or just hadn't had the supporting players around them to have success. And even if you look at the last 2 expansion teams and the expansion draft rules, the rules are set up that basically they should be taking kind of like 3rd-line players and number 5D. But in both cases, they were able to build teams that were playoff caliber teams within 1 or 2 years of their existence. So I think my point is, I think there's a lot of players out there. There's a lot of good players out there that if you're smart about the people you add and they work within your system, you can have a competitive team without having to completely tear it down and go through the pain of trying to get a number 1 pick and hoping you get a number 1 pick and hoping it's the right guy in the right year. And then, building up from there.
Right.
So,
We're joined by Chris Patrick, Capitals' new general manager. You touched on Ryan Leonard. How do Caps fans curb their enthusiasm for him? Because he's the shiny toy, he's the top 10 pick. They want to see him up with the big club, but you want to give him some seasoning in Hershey. You want him to get a taste of that, bring him up. Like, how do Caps fans manage their expectations for such a high pick like that?
Yeah, I mean, and you can see why they get excited. I mean, he's a guy that's the fans just watched him this past week at our development camp, and he's always on. I mean, everything's a competition. He wants to be the best. He wants to be the guy that wins. And yeah, I mean, I think manage your expectations, curb your enthusiasm. I mean, I think it's okay to be excited about him. But it is hard. As much success as he's had, up to this point in his career, this is the best league in the world, and these guys are really good at what they do, and they can make a lot of good players get pretty humbled pretty quickly. So, I think like any young player, he's going to have his ups and downs and his, getting acclimated to the league. But he certainly, once he gets there and once he's comfortable, I think he'll be a pretty good player for us.
So I was watching Hard Knocks the other day, for the first episode, and they're doing an off-season Hard Knocks, and it was focusing on the GM of the New York Giants. And one thing that struck me, because none of us have ever been in the room, is there were like 8 guys in the room talking about what to do with Saquon Barkley and his franchise tag. And you're somebody who's dealt with analytics, contract negotiations, player personnel, budget. When you guys have to make these decisions and you make trades and you look at draft, how many people are in the room? Like, now you're the boss as GM, but how many people are in there are you chatting with?
Yeah, we have about that. It's let me just count off the top of my head here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 8 people in the room plus the GM. Yeah, and it's our process. I'm really proud of. I'm proud of how it's evolved over the years, and I think it's for me. Them Ted and Dick putting me in this position, I think, is a affirmation of this process that we've built. But yeah, we're very integrated. We have our analytics team in the room. We have our pro scouting staff in the room. We have some hockey ops support staff in the room, and absolutely every person in there has a voice and is free to say what they want. They don't have to agree. They don't have to be right or wrong. We just want to hear what you think and how you back it up. And it's pretty healthy discussions, and it's definitely it's a grind. It's not a quick snap decision. I mean, we talk through it, we analyze it, we think about it, we sleep on it, come back, watch video, and talk about it some more. And in the meantime, everybody's kind of doing their roles. The analytics team is, kind of sharpening their pencils on the stuff they have on the player, and the scouts obviously they have a read on the player as the on ice stuff. But if we're getting down the road doing something serious like we were with Pierre-Luc, they start making calls to people they know that, might have insights onto the person's character or the person's personality or how they might fit in the room. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work that these people do for us that's invaluable. And it's a very collaborative group effort, which I think from the outside looking in, it just looks like there's a GM, making calls and pulling the trigger on deals, but it's definitely a much larger group than that.
Yeah, big support staff. Well, I don't know how much you can talk about it, but you got some older players, right, and some older players that are breaking down, and TJ Oshie's just a great dude. I played golf with TJ before. He's just a great guy.
He sandbagged you.
He sandbagged me.
Yeah.
Told me he was a 15 handicap. He shot 76. And then
we have some really good golfers on our team.
Oh, hell yeah. He's one of them. But, he missed 30 games this year, mostly because of that back injury. He had to go to Minnesota, go back to his chiropractor. When he was crawling on the ice, man, that just looked bad. How much can you talk about his – like the decision making for TJ to come back if he's going to come back? Because we'd heard rumors that he was probably going to shut it down, and
but he says he wants to come back.
He says he wants to come back, and I'm just wondering what you're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously TJ is like the ultimate competitor, ultimate team guy. So those games where, like you said, when he's crawling off the ice, which was hard to watch.
I mean, that was scary. Yeah.
Yeah, and or even games where he hops out for pregame skate and then has to pull himself off. I mean, he hates doing that to his teammates, and it drives him crazy. And so what he's trying to do is find a solution this summer to try to prevent that from happening. He's not sure if he'll be able to find one or not. I think we'll know at training camp more, but where he is in that process, and then we can make or he'll make the call with our medical team as far as where his body is and if he's able to do it or not. But like one thing I definitely got an appreciation of, I was around the team more, especially the last half of this year, on the road with them more, and I was there for that game when he crawled off the ice, and it's you see him crawl off the ice, and the next 3 or 4 days were not fun days for TJ Oshie. I mean, it was hard for him to just to try to take care of himself and try to get his back in the right spot. So I know he doesn't want to have to go through that stuff again if he can avoid it.
Right.
We're joined by Chris Patrick, the Capitals' new general manager, just named yesterday. So your cousin, Steve Patrick, who's a well-known indie pop drummer, he had a great tweet after the news of your hiring. He said, "My cousin just became the GM of an NHL team, and I just woke up at 11 a.m. with a hangover and binged Stranger Things and ate Cheerios. Being a musician was a choice I made." So Steve apparently did not make the choice to go into the family business, but he then went on to laud you about how dedicated you are to working for the Capitals and working in the organization for so many years. But pretty funny tweet by your cousin.
Yes, Steve's awesome. He is a huge Caps fan, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. So sometimes there's tweets where I'm like, "Oh, Steve, I kind of wish you didn't say that today." But he's I love his passion, and obviously my cousin, and I love him, and his father, who unfortunately passed away a number of years ago. He was my father's little brother, and he was one of my favorite uncles, and always loved coming and watch me play, especially when I was at Princeton, and always was there with a huge hug. He had a huge heart, which I think you can see in Steve. And then the funny thing is, Steve's got 2 brothers, and he's got one brother who's super reserved and quiet, and another brother who makes Steve look like he's on mute. So
totally
it's
opposites.
By the way, Chris, what's it like being part of a hockey royalty family? I mean, your dad is Caps chairman Dick Patrick. You're the great-grandson of Hockey Hall of Famer Lester Patrick. I believe 7 different Patricks have their names on the Stanley Cup. I mean, the Patrick division from 1974 to 1993 is named after your family. Well, what's that like, just having all of that hockey ingrained in your DNA?
Yeah, I mean, it was as a kid growing up, it was really neat. Like I was definitely a kind of a hockey history buff, and I loved grabbing whatever kind of hockey reference book I could find, and I go straight to the index and look up Patrick and try to find pictures of my grandfather when he was playing, or my great grandfather, and then I just used to kind of as a kid, getting at family reunions and stuff, kind of hang around and try to eavesdrop on what my dad and my Uncle Craig and my Uncle Paul was my dad's brother, and my grandpa were all kind of talking about and hearing some of the old stories. And so it was a really neat experience for me. And I'm definitely proud and appreciative that I got to have that. And and the Stanley Cup thing was, obviously really cool. Like, I know my father it was something that he really wanted to accomplish in his career. And I think he was starting to get to the point where, and he's even told me this, he was starting to get to the point where he was like, well, you know what? It's fine if I don't win. Like, it's been good. We've had a good run here. And as for him to get one and to see him hold it up with the big assist from Ovi there on the ice, it was really awesome to see. And that's probably the thing I'm most proud of in my career, is that I was able to get Dick's name on there and have him achieve that goal.
That's awesome.
Well, Chris, man, great getting to know you. Awesome that you were a longtime Junkies listener. That was unexpected from the HFS days.
Very cool.
And congratulations on the job, man. You deserve it.
Yeah, and we'll talk soon before camp, okay?
Yeah, that sounds great anytime, guys. I really appreciate it. And, have a great rest of the summer.